This is Bel and the Dragon, 1 in verse 4. And the king worshipped it and went daily to adore it. But Daniel worshipped his own God. And the king said unto him, Why doest not thou worship Bel? Who answered and said, Because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God, who hath created the heaven and the earth, and have sovereignty over all flesh. I like to start off by saying, Kol Haloyim La Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rahakak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of GMS. Shalom to the hopeful elect. I think I'm gonna title this video, you got a visual, something of the effect of, you have to visualize these scriptures like a movie, right? Because when you read these scripts, and you put yourself, sometimes you gotta put yourself in the actual, like in the story, and this is literally like a movie, so you could really understand it even better, understand it better. So I'm gonna start from the top. This is Bel and the Dragon in the Apocrypha, starting from verse 1. And Daniel conversed with the king and was honored above all his friends. So yeah, and the king of Stagis basically died, and Cyrus basically was the one that, he took the throne after him, And Daniel was like basically this is top god, was basically one of his top gods. It says, Now the Babylons had an idol called Bel, and they were spent upon him every day 12 great measures of fine flour, and 40 sheep, and 6 vessels of wine. And the king worshipped it and went daily to adore it. But Daniel worshipped his own God, Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shah. And the king said unto him, Why doest not thou worship Bel? Who answered and said, Because I may not worship idols made with hands, but the living God, who have created the heaven and the earth, and have sovereignty over all flesh. Yeah, and Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shah. And sovereignty meaning rulership, he's government, he has authority over all flesh, over everything. It says, Then said the king unto him, Thinkest thou not that Bel is a living God? Basically saying, you don't think Bel's a living God? Seest thou not how much he eateth and drinketh every day? Yeah, because you see that they was bringing in they were bringing in wine and a lot of food and stuff for this idol, this king thinking that this idol was eating this stuff, when it was he really wasn't. And it says, Then Daniel smiled and said, O king, be not deceived, for this is but clay within and brass without. Meaning this is just clay and brass. This is just a statue. This is just an idol. It's not eating nothing. This is not alive. It says, and did never eat or drink anything. So the king was wroth, meaning the king was tight, he was angry, and called for his priests and said unto them, If ye tell me not who this is that devoureth these expenses, ye shall die. Meaning, if you don't tell me who's eating and drinking up all of this stuff, then you're going to die. He says, But if you can certify me that Bel devoured them, then Daniel shall die. Basically saying, if you could guarantee me that Bel is the one that's eating this stuff and drinking the wine that we're leaving for it, this idol, then we're going to kill Daniel. He says, For he have spoken blasphemy against Bel. Because he basically said that's not a living God. It's just a statue. It's just clay and brass. And Daniel said unto the king, Let it be according to thy word. So yeah, let's do it. It says, this is verse 10. Now the priests of Bel were 70, besides their children and wives. So 60 plus 10. So the priest of Bel. So Bel, basically there was 70 priests, and not including their wives and children, that was working for or worshiping this idol Bel, or working for this idol Bel. It says, and the king went with Daniel into the temple of Bel. So Bel's priest said, Lo, we go out, but thou, O king, set on the meat and make ready the wine and shut the door fast and seal it with thy own seal. Meaning, all right, we gonna leave, but you set it. You bring the food in, you bring in the wine, and then you shut the door, and then you seal it. You make sure you seal it with your seal. So that's how you know nobody went in there. It says, and tomorrow when thou comest in, if thou findest not that Bel have eaten up all, we will suffer death, or else Daniel that speaketh falsely against us. And they regarded, this is back in verse 13, had a little technical issue. It says, and they little regarded it. For under the table they made a privy entrance, privy, secret, private, whereby they entered and continually and consumed those things, right? So that's why they didn't regard it. They didn't care that the king, they didn't care about none of that, because they already knew that, listen, that you could seal the door, close, and everything, because we're going to find a way to get in, you know? So it says, so when they were gone forth, the king set meats before Baal. Now Daniel had commanded his servants to bring ashes, and those that strewed throughout all the temple in the presence of the king alone. Right. Then went they out and shut the door and sealed it with the king's signet, and so departed. Yeah, so Daniel basically had his servants come and bring ashes and throw ashes on the floor. You know, but only they knew, and the king knew. No, the priests, they didn't know that. So it says, now in the night came the priests with their wives and children, as they were wont to do, and did eat and drink up all. So yeah, they came through that little secret entrance that they had under the table, 70 of them, with their wives and children, and they ate all, and they drank all of the stuff that the king left for the idol Baal. It says, in the morning beat time, the king arose, and Daniel with them. So now it's time to see what's going on. It says, and the king said, Daniel, are the seals whole? Meaning, did anybody go through the door after I sealed it? He says, and he said, yeah, O king, they be whole. Meaning, yeah, they still there. The seals are still there. Nobody broke the seals. Nobody came in through this way. It says, and as soon as he opened the door, the king looked upon the table and cried with a loud voice, great art thou, O Baal, and with thee is no deceit at all. Yeah, so he's like, oh shoot, the food and the drink is gone. So this idol is real, you know, because he had his faith in his idol. And Daniel again laughed at him. It says, then laughed Daniel and held the king that he should not go in. Now before the king could even go into the room, Daniel held him, because remember, he put ashes on the floor. So he said, and he held the king that he should not go in, and said, behold now the pavement. Look on the floor. And mark well, whose footsteps are these? So he's like, hold on. Look on the floor. You don't see these footsteps? Because he had the ashes. So the ashes, and mind you, the priest didn't know that. So he says, and the king said, I see footsteps of men, women, and children. And then the king was angry. So yeah, now he's tight, because he's like, oh shit. You was right. This is it's looking more and more like this idol is just that, an idol, and not a living God. And took the priests. It says, and then the king was angry, and took the priests with their wives and children, who showed him the privy doors. Now he basically showing them that they're showing them like, look, this is the entrance. This is the secret doors that we would use to come in, where they came in and consumed such things as were under the table. Therefore the king slew them, and delivered Baal into Daniel's power, who destroyed him in the temple. Right. So the king basically seen the doors, the secret entrance with these the priests, because the priests were deceiving the king. You know, they was eating and drinking up all of the shit, basically. So the king basically killed them, and then he basically just threw the idol to Daniel, like, do what you will, man. Fuck it, it's over. You know, because Daniel proved that was just an idol. It says, now this is verse 23. It says, and in that same place there was a great dragon, because you know in Babylon they worship many idols. So it says, which they of Babylon worshipped. And the king said unto Daniel, wilt thou also say that this is brass? Like, yeah, this ain't no statue. This is living. This is alive. It says, lo, he liveth, he eateth and drinketh. Thou canst not say that he is no living God, therefore worship him. So he's basically telling Daniel, yeah, worship him. He's alive. This creature's alive. It ain't no statue. It eats, it drinks, it kills. This is real. Then said Daniel unto the king, I will worship the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, my power, for he is the living God. But give me leave, O king, and I shall slay this dragon without sword or staff. Basically saying, give me permission, and I'm gonna this ain't no God. I'm gonna kill him with no weapon. It says the king said, I give thee leave. All right, I will give you permission. It says, then Daniel took pitch and fat and hair and did seethe them together and made lumps thereof. This he put in the dragon's mouth, and so the dragon burst in sunder. And Daniel said, lo, these are the gods ye worship. So yeah, Daniel put together some sort of concoction and he fed it to the dragon, and the dragon died. Like basically it killed the dragon. And then he looked at the king and was like, these are the gods y'all talking about? A statue and some shit that I just killed, a creature that I just killed? These are your gods? What was that? That was 24, right? No, that was Salakia, for he is the living God. All right. And that's 27. He said, and Daniel said, lo, these are the gods ye worship. When they of Babylon heard that, they took great indignation and conspired against the king. So now, yeah, the citizens of Babylon, the Babylonians, they tight. They're like, hold on. You destroyed Baal, the idol Baal, the statue, and then you just want to kill our dragon? Like, you killing our gods, these are false gods, or whatever. And it says, and conspired against the king. Like, now they running down on the king now, saying the king has become a Jew. Basically, the king is aligning with Daniel believing in this God that Daniel so-called speaks about, which we know is Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shah. It says, the king is a Jew, and he hath destroyed Baal. He hath slain the dragon and put the priest to death. So they came to the king and said, deliver us, Daniel, or else we will destroy thee and thine house. So they basically they cornered the king in, like, listen, either bring us Daniel or we're going to kill you. It says, now when the king saw that they pressed him sore, being constrained, he delivered Daniel unto them. So yeah, he gave him up. He gave up Daniel, like, all right. And they cast him into the lion's den. It says, who cast him into the lion's den where he was 6 days. So they threw him in the lion's den. And it says, and in the den there were 7 lions, and they had given them every day 2 carcasses and 2 sheep. So they was feeding these lions every day 2 carcasses and 2 sheep. It says, which then were not given to them to the intent that they might devour Daniel. So they didn't even feed these lions. These lions were ravenous. They were starving, basically. They used to eating every day, and they made sure that they didn't feed them. So now when they put Daniel in there, they're hoping that they look at Daniel like a piece of food and they go kill him. That was the intent. You know? Where we at? Salakia. It says, right, it says that with the intent they might devour Daniel. Now there was in Jewry a prophet called Habakkuk, who had made pottage and broken bread in a bowl, and was going into the field to bring it to the reapers. So he had some food, and he was going to bring it to the laborers that was in the field. It says, but the angel of the Lord said unto Habakkuk, go carry the dinner that thou hast into Babylon unto Daniel, who was in the lion's den. So there the Lord's angels came upon, was speaking to Habakkuk and was like, yo, that food you got, go bring that to Daniel. He's in Babylon. He's in the lion's den. Now Habakkuk didn't even know anything about Babylon, nor where he don't even know where he's going. It says, and Habakkuk said, Lord, I never saw Babylon, neither do I know where the den is. Like, I don't know where you want me to go. It says, then the angel of the Lord took him by the crown and bare him by the hair of his head, and through the vehemency of his spirit set him in Babylon over the den. And Habakkuk cried, saying, O Daniel, Daniel, take the dinner which God hath sent thee. So yeah, the angels basically brung Habakkuk from wherever he was all the way to Babylon in the lion's den to deliver this food to Daniel, who was in the lion's den and hadn't eaten. It says, and Daniel said, thou hast remembered me, O God, neither hast thou forsaken them that seek thee and love thee. Right? So Daniel's like, oh wow. So it's like a miracle. Like Daniel, he's like, the Lord, you ain't forget me. You know, you ain't forsake me. You don't forsake them that, you know, that actually seek you and that love you. Because, you know, when we read in this is another video I might do, but when we even reading like Susanna, it was the same thing. It looked as if like the Lord was going to let them just be destroyed, but the Lord, he wound up coming back and basically helping them out at the last minute. It says, So Daniel arose and did eat. And the angel of the Lord set Habakkuk in his own place again immediately. So basically, after he gave Daniel the food, the angel brought Habakkuk back to the field or wherever he was at. It says, upon the seventh day, the king went to bewail Daniel. So I guess to mourn Daniel because he thought Daniel was dead. And because that was his friend. At the end of the day, that was his friend. It says, Salakia. And it says, and when he came to the den, he looked in, and behold, Daniel was sitting. So he's like, oh, wow, 7 days. I ain't feed these damn lions. And Daniel was still inside the lion's den alive. It says, then cried the king with a loud voice, saying, great art, Lord God of Daniel. There is none other beside thee. So at that point, he was already sold. He was like, nah, Daniel, you running with the living God. Like, you defied the odds. You just sat in a lion's den with starving lions, and you alive. You know, your God is the living God. Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shah. That's the ultimate power. You know, at that point, the king, he was convinced. And it says, it says, and he drew him out and cast those that were the cause of his destruction into the den. So yeah, he basically, once he knew that, he was like, all right, then you got the truth. You with the Lord. You know the true Lord. You know the true living power. And he took him out the lion's den. And mind you, when he was in there, the lions didn't touch him. And then the king threw the people that basically ran down on him to get Daniel, and that threw Daniel in there. He threw them in there. It says, and he drew him out and cast those that were the cause of his destruction into the den, and they were devoured in a moment before his face. So yeah, Daniel sat up in there 7 days and didn't get touched, you know. But then the very minute that this king threw those men that wanted Daniel's head, threw them in there, they was killed automatically. The lions tore them up immediately. That also goes to show that the Lord was with Daniel, you know. And so that was it. I was just like as I was reading it, I was just visualizing it like, damn, that's crazy. You know, when you like kind of like, you got to like put yourself into the scriptures, man. And it's like, that's a faith booster because, you know, the scriptures say, paraphrasing, that this was written for our learning. So like when we read these stuff, we got to know like, all right, we may not be thrown into a lion's den, but we're going to be put in some sticky situations where it's going to look dim. It's going to look like it's over. You know, like the Lord might have forgot us, or it might be our time to go. But then, you know, through these scriptures, we realize, listen, the Lord is going to find a way. He brung Daniel food. He done had the angel bring Habakkuk to Daniel. Mind you, Habakkuk don't even know where Daniel's at, or even he don't know. He's not even familiar. Like, you feel me? So the Lord just kind of made everything happen, and he still basically, he looked out for his people, man. And that's basically the moral of this whole thing. Like, he looked out for Daniel, you know. So Lord willing, this was a faith booster, and you know, just like a edifying lesson. Like when you read these scriptures, sometimes you got to visualize, like the same way you're gonna watch a movie, you know. You're gonna because when I read this scripture, I was thinking about, I don't know if you're familiar with the movie what's the show, Game of Thrones, right? And then they threw the and then the bastard, he had the ravenous dogs. And he ain't feed the dogs for mad long, the hounds. And then, you know, he was going to use the hounds to kill, I forgot who it was. Maybe it might have been Cersei. Not Cersei, it may have been his wife. But whatever, basically the dogs, they were so hungry and they were starving that they wound up eating him, you know? And so I thought about that, you know, and it made me think like, yo, this thing is like a movie. You got to really read these scriptures like you will be watching a movie and put yourself in it. But, you know, not to just like drag it on, but Lord will, it was an edifying lesson. You know, I want to say, Kol William La, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahweh Shai, B'Hashem B'Hakakwadash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of GMS. Shalom.